you want to meet God, you need to go to Ash Lake. From the bonfire at Firling Shrine, take the stairs behind the big tree and ride the elevator down into New Londo. With the master key, open the gate inside the ruins that unlocks a direct path into Blighttown. Descend into the murky swamps at the bottom and find your way to the Great Hollow. As the name suggests, climbing the roots of the giant hollowed-out tree, you'll find yourself descending through a vertical mushroom structure before landing at the base and peering into this. What is this? A fully coded and modeled area inhabited by some unimportant NPCs and a Hydra that's completely and utterly optional, but at the same time, through its very materiality, its majesty, it must be important. Like, dude, this is the base of the entire map. The horizon shows a gazillion other trees that seems to basically support the entirety of the game. There is simply no possible way that this incredible spectacle is just that. An incredible spectacle. I run through the sand. I gaze at the gargantuan tree trunks yonder. I can't quite put it into words, this feeling. Something greater than me. Something greater than the Hydra, greater than the dragon, dwells here. Something divine, something monstrous. This must be the place where God dwells. Not Dark Souls' God, not Gwyn or his predecessors or the concept of soul, but God. I'm not talking about God the creator or some ethereal entity with divine power, but God as something that's precisely inconceivable and other. In fact, in all of human history, I argue that the only real consensus we could reach about God is that God is above human understanding, perhaps outside it even. Something that captures us and simultaneously refuses to be captured by us, that refuses our understanding. Something like an Ash Lake. If that makes intuitive sense to you, the entirety of the map of Fumito Ueda's Ico must seem similar, for it too floods your senses with everything while explaining nearly nothing. The barren fortress is uninhabited by humans, a sort of ritual ground filled with sacrificial little children. We are one of those children, a horned boy, but it is unknown exactly what we are, as well as why we were brought here. To save the village from what? The girl we find way up high in a cage speaks a language undecipherable in the very first playthrough. Of course, as a game, it must teach us the basic mechanics in order for it to be playable, but still, what we are missing is the context, the why, the meaning behind our actions. Throughout the game, we encounter puzzles that involve intuitive decision-making. Nothing is spelled out or instructed to us through any kind of language. The Fortress of Ico is a space that eludes explanation. The game has minimal HUD elements, the soundscape of the game is dominated by the sounds of physical actions, and nearly no recognizable language. Who built this place? What is its necessity? What is its relation with the dark forces that sometimes seem to inhabit it? And most importantly, why is it so empty? We build fortresses to create a place out of space, a finite area of specific utility. When you look at a space, you can somewhat intuit what the space would have been used for: a prison or a cage, a bathing, cleaning area, a place to sleep, and so on. But the fortress exists outside our expectations of utility. Or to slightly reword it, reason is absent from this space. An absence that can be felt in the eerie calmness of the game. There is a tranquil-looking windmill high up in the castle, but why? There is no real reason to harness the power of the wind. There are trolley tracks surrounding the castle towers, but again, for what purpose? These places escape any and all attempts to represent them in a coherent structure. It's almost like they exist for their own sake, or perhaps for the sake of eluding our understanding. Hegel's Phenomenology of Spirit, the big, scary, mystical book that everyone's heard of, begins with sense certainty. This is immediate experience. This is you, consciousness, becoming aware of the world through your senses. You see, hear, and feel your immediate surroundings. You've not identified any particular objects. This stage is the millisecond of sense experience, where all the senses appear to you as a slurry of sensations. You simply feel. You do not recognize, categorize, or even understand. You simply know what it is in front of you as a this, and nothing more than a this. Now, while in Echo you can understand and recognize most of the physical places, something is still off, isn't it? You do not quite understand it, but you can feel the vibes. Today, everyone is into vibes. A major symptom of the society of spectacle is, of course, this. If the vibes are immaculate, whatever the thing is must also be immaculate. Here too, the vibes are, in fact, immaculate. Echo is gorgeous. Echo feels mystical. But that's the extent to which we can describe Echo. Mere descriptions of sensory data devoid of thinking. Animal-like. The way we interact with the world of Echo is through the entire body of the horned boy, the running, the attacking, the climbing, the swinging, all drenched in a realistic, lifelike clumsy. In the face of this divinity exuding from the fortress, we are but scuttering bugs. In Shadow of the Colossus, more of the same could be identified. That is to say, identification itself is the extent to which we can engage with its world, specifically its architecture and its inhabitants. Once again, you are given only a semblance of reason. There is a seemingly dead girl whom you have brought to a sacred deserted temple where the voice of the higher powers instruct you to do their bidding in order to save the girl. But once again, the game's world is a total mystery. Who is this higher being and what's its deal? Who is the main character, Wander, and what's their deal? Who is the dead girl? What are these half-stone, half-living gargantuans that are the Colossi, and why are we instructed to kill them? Riding across the world, it is hard not to feel this eerie sense of confusion. Once again, we have this space consisting of spectacular sights and incredible beings, but one that lends absolutely no time to explain itself or be put into a sensible context for us. These worlds, both Echoes and Shadow of the Colossus, tear a hole in our structure of knowing. There is this excess, something left over, something greater that lurks across the map, across the nonsensical structures of Echo and the boss arenas of Shadow. Lacan calls the real that which eludes signification. That is to say, that which refuses to be brought into the symbolic order, or in layman's terms, experiences that we cannot exactly talk about or communicate properly, because in doing so, the kernel, the core of it is lost. For that core refuses representation, refuses language. This happens because meaning is not excavated, but created. Our reality, or what we know as our reality, is created through a complex process of social interactions that's sustained by language, which brings into existence the symbolic order or the realm of meaning. Here's the thing, the symbolic order is imperfect. It is not whole. It has holes and inconsistencies that weigh on it. And this causes a fissure of sorts within the structure itself. A gap, a lack, or the real. In Echo, the real is everywhere, from the picturesque windmill to the large empty and quiet rooms that serve no purpose at all. We see the real in its absence. They keep disturbing us, disrupting our attempts at creating meaning in a world that so clearly refuses the creation of it. In Colossus, after Wander slays the 16th and the last of the Colossi, we cut to the final playable segment. We become the very thing we have been destroying. We become a dark, monstrous version of the Colossi. This is especially shocking because this completely breaks this already baseless, explanationless logic that had been established throughout the game. The gameplay loop brings into existence a structure that it itself annihilates in the final act, thereby exposing the fact that this world, this narrative, had all been nothing but a void from the very beginning. This is the real as the destructive. This is God laughing at you, mocking your stupid attempt at symbolizing. For Lacan, there are many faces that the real can wear, one of which, I'd argue, is God. In theology, the description of God is always impotent. He is the creator, but he is also more than just the creator. He is the facilitator of life, but he is also more than just that. He is love, but he is also more than just love. He is everything. But yet again, he cannot be contained within that description. God is an excess. And looking back at the fortress, the colossi, the windmill, the player-made Colossus, is it not excess? Is it not God what we see in these games? An uncanny, eerie, sublime, at the same time a destructive and traumatic God? Quote, "The real as the monstrous thing behind the veil of appearances is precisely the ultimate lure which, as Richard Kearney was right to emphasize, led itself easily to the New Age appropriation, as in Joseph Campbell's notion of the monstrous God." Quote unquote. By monster, I mean some horrendous presence or apparition that explodes all our standards for harmony, order, and ethical conduct. That's God in the role of the destroyer. Such experiences go past ethical judgments. God is horrific. Looking at Dark Souls today is a task much simpler than when it was first released. The game begins, like Echo and Colossus, with one singular cutscene that subverts our expectations. No, thirst, to be given context and meaning. The voice of an old sage-like woman spells out the backstory of the world we are about to enter into, and yet the world she describes is an epic. The mythical age of the dragons, the valorous war ending with the age of light, the glory of the four-endowed with the Lord Souls. But, of course, the world we enter into, the world we interact with, is a mere shadow, a twisted abstraction of the one described. Indeed, today, if we wanted to know why that is, we can stroll on over to Vati Vidya or any other lore channel and excavate the rich history of the world, but put yourselves in the shoes of someone who bought the game the day after it came out and experienced it as it was originally possible to experience it, as a world that refuses cohesion. The only information about the space you inhabit is found in cryptic item descriptions that you most definitely would not have stopped to read. Instead, the environment of the game, the materiality tells the story, and the story is one that does not really correspond with the exposition we have been given both at the beginning of the game nor by the NPCs. Yes, you meet and kill the characters mentioned in the exposition as bosses, but yet again, these aren't the greater-than-thou beings we were led to believe, but broken and aged creatures that bear only faint resemblance to the aforementioned glory. Furthermore, it is not just Ash Lake, its explanationless, sublime vibes, but the entire narrative of Dark Souls itself that is submerged in the unspeakable horror I call God. While the first game ends without an ending, that is to say, you end up postponing the end of everything, or you end everything only for everything to start again, the second game, while keeping the unmeaning of the narrative, spreads it over the physical space itself. A lot has been said about the nonsensical nature of Dark Souls 2's map. There are places you see from one point of the game that, when you go there, turn out to be a completely impossible area. The YouTube channel Emerald has a video showing how levels literally clip through and coincide when rendered out in a way that should mirror the game's linear progression. This is a world that, in its very materiality, wants to hurt your understanding, your reason, your symbolic register. As H-Bomb says in his video, this is not a design flaw, but the very point of the game. This has always been the point. Dark Souls was always about throwing you into the pits of unmeaning, to a primordial god that evades and attacks reason. Moving forward, in Dark Souls 3, we once again return to the area where Dark Souls 1, the time we once knew and played through, used to be. This is not Lordran, but Lothric. The Firelink Shrine, Anor Londo, Lost Izalith, the Darkwood Basin, they're all here, but they are not really. They have rotted away, leaving in their place a grayer version that feels alien to us. Following the logic of media franchises bringing back locations and/or characters to bait nostalgia out of paying consumers, one would expect the same warm, gooey nostalgia to gush out. But if there is a nostalgia that is present in returning to Dark Souls, it is cold and traumatic. The mounting dunes of ash that form the iconic landscapes of Dark Souls 3 perfectly embody the dark divinity of God. Dark Souls 3 is indeed thinking of ending things. The return is not a joyful return to a happy childhood, but an agonizing fall back into trauma for a depressive. But there can be no end, for it is the curse it shall bear. It must continue to be unsymbolized. In short, these games, these virtual spaces, are in themselves excesses, an existence which feels alive on its own, and at the same time, absences with a void of meaning or reason behind them. They are both weird and eerie, as Mark Fisher describes them. They are present in a way that really doesn't feel like they should be, while at the same time, something in them remains out of our grasp, absent. If you want to meet God, you should play the 2021 indie game Sable. At a very basic and broad glance at Sable, you're likely to assume that a similar set of examinations applies for Sable as did for Ico, Shadow, and Dark Souls. Sable is a hyper-stylized world with vast, open, and barren lands filled with mysterious locations, both natural and man-made, hell, even magical. There are majestic sand dunes, rock formations, ruined temples that worship old forgotten gods, space explorers from the past, floating structures of worship, and so on. You are a naive youngling named Sable who has been let out into the world following the customs of her tribe, and you are pretty much on your own with little explanation or exposition as to the history of the world. but where the Ueda games and Dark Souls centers the alienation of the players with the world they're interacting with, the estrangement of understanding and reason, Sable reconciles what was alien in those games. So there's this guy called Kant, and his whole deal was that he set out to build a proper groundwork for a total theory for what it means to know, by basically revolutionizing the existing ideas of knowledge of his time. He posits a synthesis between the rationalists on the one side and the empiricists on the other, which is to say, bronze versus the the brains versus the bronze. His theory was basically that we use cognition, our mental faculties, to know the world. In other words, we don't experience the world as it is, like what the bronze thought, but at the same time, we don't independently, through our cognition alone, know the truth. This implied that while we do get to know truth, we don't get to know the whole truth, or truth as it is in itself. We only get to know the appearances of real objects, but not the objects in themselves. Anyways, so upon this groundwork, many philosophers tried to build their own systems. Fichte and his Ich-Philosophie, Schelling and his Naturphilosophie, and so on, but they were all left behind in the dust by this other cool guy, Hegel. Okay, it's the other way around. Hegel, while accepting the conditions of knowledge given by Kant, rejects the whole idea that cognition and the self are separate from what is out there. The subject, you, don't come to know the object, the world, from a purely separate, sterile process. You are a part of that world. You are a conscious nature. Your cognition is not an instrument you use to get to the truth, like a surgeon using his tools to operate on his unconscious patient, but your cognition itself is a part of the truth it is knowing, and this act of knowing itself is a part of the truth. In fact, you are truth. You are the world. This journey from sense certainty, the condition of pure being I mentioned earlier, to what Hegel calls the absolute mind is laid out in his famous cool book called Phenomenology of Spirit. So, what is the absolute mind? Simply put, it is subject equals object. Spirit recognizes that the absolute was in itself. Kinda, sorta, like in Sable. There are mysteries in Sable, sure, but they never feel totally alien, totally outside the capabilities of language and/or human comprehension. Even the phenomena that some would do are themselves given space inside the realm of understanding. The real, or the ungraspable, is made immanent in the world itself. The people and society that inhabit the lands of Sable do not consider the world or its mysteries as alien or ungraspable. There is a synergy between these beings and the lands. The richness of the cultures arising from the relationship between them point to its existence. The spirit, the social consciousness, has come to identify itself with what it once was alienated from, that being the once outside world. The game literally opens with a god initiating your journey and giving you the power to glide, an essential mechanic. This literal god, too, is a mystical entity, but not a traumatic one. It is in conversation with the spirit. It talks to us, and we talk back. Not literally, of course. The mysteries that we come across in the world, instead of hurting the understanding, invites reason. What happened to the space explorers? What are the gods and the magical forces that work in this world? What were these abandoned structures used for? Unlike the Fortress of Echo, which is apathetic of our Inquisition, Sable's world engenders engagement. It encourages investigation. Sable converts knowledge from paranoia, a desperate struggle to make sense, to being itself. It gives agency as subject and spirit to determine ourselves. After all, the point of Sable's journey is to know the world as much or as little as she wants before returning and becoming who she decides to be. This is God. This is the self-determining spirit. Unlike the dunes of ash that exemplify the despairing relationship with the unknown we have, the sand dunes of Sable point to a freedom and agency. God is no longer out there tearing holes in our sociolinguistic structures, our world, but is our world. That is us. Man, if only video games were real. Thank you to my dear patrons, Key, Zigzag Kangaroo, Drowning Curious, Ali, Andrew Fruki, Archagent Everlasting, and Abs. Your support means a lot to me, and I hope that you enjoyed this video and would like more and stuff. Check out my Patreon if you want to support me financially, and want more videos and want more insights into how I make videos and stuff. I just got into college, and that's why the videos may be longer or a bit different than they used to be, or changes are coming, changes are happening in this channel. But yeah, I got into college, and that's why I need the money. I really am not great with talking without a script, as you can see. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Please comment, subscribe, and like the video, and let me know your thoughts and stuff. Yeah. Happy absolute knowing, I guess. Goodbye.